You're watching UBC, and these are the budget conversations. And this evening, we're talking to the acting Deputy Governor, Bank of Uganda, who's also the Executive Director, Research at the bank. Thank you very much, Dr. Adam Mugume, for talking to us. As a regulator of the financial sector or service providers that will bear the brunt of the loans going bad during this period, slow borrowing, low deposits, and income, what could be, as we talk about the financial year 2020-2021 and the budget that is going to be read, what would be a good budget for the banks in order to have a smaller hit within this pandemic?
I think the most important part of the budget is for government to pay the private sector what it owes them. If government consume the service from private sector or a good, that payment is liquidity injected to a bank and to the private sector. So a good budget, I think, to really to make the economy recover, is partly to ensure that all the private sector arrears are paid. Whether it is a good, whether it is a service. I think that really is instrumental, because the only challenge we have is you hear private sector saying that government owes us 3 trillion. 3 trillion is a lot of money. Now, so imagine if that's true, and the 3 trillion is injected into the economy in the coming few months. That will be, will take the banking sector on a positive side, because that is liquidity that is in the banking sector. Because a private entity is paid through a bank. When you are paid through a bank, you don't take all your liquidity money. You leave it there. So that's how the commercial bank is also able to lend the money to a person who is borrowing. So I think, to the extent the budget is talking about clearing of the areas, I think that is a positive side. A good budget is obviously that one that ensures that the private sector recovers in terms also, leave alone the areas, but also the expenditure side. What is the budget all about? Infrastructure, making sure that the roads are working, which is good for the private sector. And so on the other side is also the expenditure on the social side, the health side. And I think the budget is emphasizing expenditure on the health, which is also a good thing for the economy and also private sector, because once you have a population that is unwell, the productivity also goes down. So every time, imagine that you are hiring people, and every week one falls sick because of many cases, then you obviously, as a private sector, you also disrupted. So I think the emphasis on paying areas, infrastructure, and health expenditure, I think those are very useful in terms of gearing up the economy.
Let's talk about the monetary policy statement, and I'll speak about the one of April and then now June, where you brought down the CBI rate by 1 percentage point from 8 now to 7. First of all, what are the fundamentals that inform that decision?
I think you saw UBOS releasing the numbers on Monday about growth. It came up with a growth estimate of 3.1 for the financial year 19-20. Now, in our estimate in April, we had 3 to 4 growth per annum. In our growth estimate for June, we're talking about 2.5 to 3.5. Now, remember that before COVID, we are talking about growth of 6 to 7. Now, you're already knocking off 3 percentage points of growth. So those are the ones that we are using monetary policy to say, okay, now 3.1 is still good, very good growth in the current circumstances where the global economy is contracting. Now, the beauty with Uganda, we are not contracting. We are growing at a slow rate. So that's not contracting. We are not in negative territory of growth. So which is really, I don't think that we have many cases of in the global economy where growth is actually positive. There are very few cases. So in that case, Uganda is doing quite well. But the question is, when you know that your potential growth is 6 to 7 and you are growing at 3, it automatically means, yeah, you are halfway your potential. So you are trying to use monetary policy to ensure that actually the economy recovers towards your potential. Now, when you use monetary policy by reducing the policy rate gradually from, we started from 9.8, now we are at 7. We are saying that we are injecting liquidity. We are leaving the liquidity in the system so that the person who comes to borrow from a commercial bank is able to borrow at relatively a lower rate. So far, when we used in April, we saw that the lending interest rate declined from 19.9 to around 17.8. So that is a positive step. 17.8 is still high. So we are saying, okay, can we ease and encourage commercial banks to reduce their lending interest rate from 17 even to around 10 or 12? So that's really our view, that once you continue easing monetary policy, then commercial bank will say, okay, we have sufficient liquidity, we can give to a private person borrowing at slightly lower interest rate.
I'll come to some of the risks observers are talking about, but I wanted to speak to something the budget is also going to inform us on, the issue around capitalizing of UDB and how government consistently says they are providing money to UDB to be able to lend at affordable rates to the market to spur what government says is import substitution, by providing the necessary capital for industrialization. However, we're asking, how much more can be done? I mean, capitalization of UDB is one thing, reduction in CBR is another, but how much more can be done to actually provide affordable, or call it cheap, capital in the market?
No, I think most of the things that can be done are not immediate. It requires restructuring the way the financial system works, okay? Because the financial system must get liquidity, or what we call deposits in commercial bank, for example. You have liquidity injected in UDB. It must come from somewhere. Think about it, by the way. Putting money in UDB is subsidizing. Why do I say so? Government borrows from the domestic market, okay? Issues a bond, because you know that the government incurs a deficit. So it automatically means it is borrowing from domestic market at 15 and puts the money to UDB to lend at 12. So that is a subsidy, okay? So remember that once the government is borrowing, someone must pay. A taxpayer must pay the cost of borrowing. So that's where we are coming from. Well, someone will say, but also UDB money is coming from IMF at zero interest rate. Yes, it is zero interest rate, but the government earns in shillings. So by the time you are going to pay, probably the exchange rate would have moved by a particular percentage. So still, that's the cost. So whatever you see, the money to UDB is sort of a subsidy. A subsidy is good if the money is going to stimulate the manufacturing the way we are talking about. So that's one angle to think through. Now, as we go back to the question you asked, what more can be done? Unfortunately, we need to start thinking of restructuring the whole financial system. Okay? For example, UDB. Instead of getting the money from government through taxpayer, once it is well restructured, it can issue its own bonds, internationally, domestically, making sure that it is functioning, it is credible enough, and therefore it can be able to lend. So that comes to through restructuring. It can issue a bond on the stock market once the whole enterprise is structured and people believe in it. They can, for example, these pension funds can put their money there, so long as they know the institution is credible. It will get money from NSSF for another pension, and will give it a manufacturing firm that has no political lineage, and therefore will do its work. So some of those aspects are long term. They may not necessarily come within 1 year. Another thing to think about financial system is think about it this way. If you have a bank that has 100 clients, you have brought systems that are supposed to serve 100,000 people, but you're only serving 100. What does that mean? It means that the 100 clients the commercial bank is serving will serve them at a higher cost compared if it was to serve 100,000. So that's the problem. You have a situation where the banking system only caters for a few individuals at expensively. So restructuring of the financial system requires that, yes, we expand the outreach, expand the financial inclusion, such that you have millions of Ugandans able to bank with the financial system. The cost will come down, okay? And therefore you're able to serve the communities or the country at slightly lower price, including the interest rate. Because this interest rate we're talking about 17 or 18, which is too high, it is still simply tells you that there are structural issues within the financial system that we have to work on. Some of these cannot be addressed in the short term. So it is not for this budget that is coming that will address all of them. No. But it is a question of saying we have to have a strategy. We have to put it under national plan that is coming up, national plan 3, to address some of these financial inclusion issues that will help us in going forward.
I really got triggered with the cost of borrowing, which the banks consistently have expressed against the high interest rate. You've mentioned fraud, but there is a conversation on the fact that we have a lot of non-performing loans and the risk of lending, where the banks are uncomfortable lending to probably the majority of Ugandans who rarely pay back, and that cost has been put onto a borrower because of historical issues, our historical borrowing issues as a country. And many say that's unfair, because that means that I will go to the bank even if I am an honest borrower, but I'm paying for the cost of someone else who failed to pay the bank loan. And I guess restructuring of the financial system would speak to that.
No, I think that also goes very very far. Imagine we have just started. The banking industry is about trust. How do I trust you if I have if I've just known with you? I've only known you for 1 year. How do I trust you? Trust is built over time, okay? And given that our history, people borrowed and they never paid. Remember, UCB, non-performing loans and more than 60%. Cooperative Bank. Greenland Bank in 1999, non-performing loans were about 50%. So that's where we are coming from. Given that culture, given the culture of where a family would start a bank and then lend itself the deposits. Remember, there are some banks, all of them are very good. So that's where you are coming from. Yes. Now that you have cleaned the system a bit, but there are some of those issues that are still lingering on. You saw some of the banks that collapsed recently, they have some of those inherent problems. So the aspect of trust, making sure that I put my money in a bank I trust, becomes very crucial. And also the same story, when a bank is lending you money, we want to see your history. Now, this person has no history. Today, before we had the identity cards, I could change my names anytime I want. Today I'm called Adam Mugume, tomorrow I'm called Swaibu somebody. So, because there was no identity card. So how does a commercial bank establish who you are? That's what the history and the trust comes along. So that takes time. So if someone defaulted before, in the case of Uganda, it still lingers. So remember that in the local language, they would say that if a person commits a crime in the village, the whole village, I don't know. Actually, it was more related to women, that if a lady got pregnant before marriage in a village, the whole village becomes, tainted. Yes. So that's where we're coming from. So now we are cleaning up our image, and so it takes time. So the question, therefore, now I come back to the issue of non-performing loan. Again, that goes into what was if the economy declines from 6 gross declining from 6 to 3, the 3 percentage point, some of those are the borrowers. So the commercial bank will know the 3% of GDP means that there are people, private sector, who borrowed, and they are going to be knocked out in that 3 percentage point. So what do you do as a commercial bank? You start tightening. You start saying, okay, who are these, which sectors are they in? Like, for example, we have started looking at the numbers of the loans that were restructured. Those who were in trade, importing goods and whatever, are hit. Those who are in services, like very good, they are also hit. So as a commercial bank, you start, remember that this is someone's money. Commercial bank doesn't have its own money, it is lending, it is my deposit. So you start looking at, so okay, so if you're in those sectors, you come for a loan, a bank would say, slowly. And that's what we already see.
Most of the observers are now saying that you've increased, literally by bringing down the CBR by 1 percentage point, you've increased the appetite of the borrowers. Those who, and it's one thing to talk about the restructuring of the existing loans, but let's talk about the new borrowers who are going to be interested now in borrowing with the lessened interest rates. However, doesn't that provide for you a future risk, a foreseeable risk on increased toxic loans because of our history, as we've talked about?
No, simply because the banking system also is very, gets it right. You don't necessarily, because we have eased, you don't just pump in loans even when the financials of the borrower are not really strong. There is a limit, and it is part of also our prudential requirements that if I'm giving you a loan as a commercial bank, I should be able to study your financial projections, your cash flow. How does it make sense? We know that, okay, 2022, we should have recovered to a growth of 6.5. So, but does the cash flow the person is putting in a request for the loan reflect the 6.5 growth or no? If not, as a commercial bank, you can't give the person that loan.
Doctor, and we also readjusting our thinking and our data based on the pandemic, because the rate of growth, for example, we're now opening up. So we may have had a very slow first half of 2020. We may have, a relatively better second half of 2020, but we don't know. We all are in a space where we're not sure. So if I was to borrow, even if I was to give you very realistic numbers, I'm not sure.
No, I agree with you 100%. We are in the world of great uncertainty. Okay? That's why we are very sorry to say, okay, for 2020, we know come the third quarter, which is up to September, we shall start seeing, we are bottoming up now. We shall start seeing relatively strong because we are reopening. But the momentum of growth will depend also partly on the global economy. If the global economy is still wobbling, it automatically means that probably our growth estimates could be also still remain subdued. That's why I was saying, okay, for 2021, growth will recover, but in the range of 4.5. So we are not 3, but at least we are moving towards 4.5. So for the loan data of 2020-2021, a commercial bank will be knowing that, yes, on average growth, economic growth for 2020-2021 is around 4.5 to 5. For 2021-2022 will be in the range of 6. So those are the cash flow we are talking about going forward.
What about the risk to your investors, the people who actually bring in some money into the economy by investing in our bonds? The risk of bringing down the CBR lessens the interest rate they will get for those bonds. Doesn't that disinterest them?
Well, partly true, but forgetting, that's why you are saying that the global economy is contracting, Ugandan economy is growing. So if the global economy is contracting, the global economy is also the rich countries, you pay a commercial bank to keep your money. So actually, whether our interest rates are decline because of using home monetary policy, it is still very, very positive. So if you brought the money here for 1 year, with the reduction of CBR, probably you get yield of 10%. It is still much better if you're a foreigner than keeping the money in UK or Europe or USA, where you are going to pay the bank to keep your money. So 10% is still much better. So that's why we are saying, okay, Uganda, we are still, the growth is low, not to the potential. Interest rate is still positive. So you are better off getting the 10% or 9% from Uganda when you're a foreigner than paying a commercial bank to keep your money. So overall, yes. Remember when we, at the beginning of the growth of this pandemic, we saw foreigners exiting the market. We saw that they took away around 80 million, which is around 300 billion, but they have started coming back. Even today, in the last week's auction, we started seeing offshore returning. We have started seeing them in the secondary market, buying government securities in the secondary market, which means that they are already seeing that globally, outside Uganda, the returns are not there. It is really they are minus. So you'd rather earn whatever you can, which is positive in the case of Uganda, rather than paying a commercial bank in outside to keep your money.
But while releasing your monetary policy statement, and I can read, you said the bank has revised down its projection of economic growth, and you've spoken to this, from a range of between 2.5 to 3% in 2020, from April 2020 forecast of 3 to 4%. However, many would say we probably should be growing at a lesser percent because of the triple threat we had. Not just the virus, but we had floods, we had the locusts. That should be a threat and inform a decision of about 1%, 2% growth rather than 2.5 to 3.5%.
Like enough, we have returns. That's why it started from the U-Boss numbers. We have returns up to April. So we are only talking about 2 months, May and June. So if you look at the returns from agriculture sector, from the service sector, all of them, whether trade, etc., and also industry, manufacturing, etc., that's what you really, those are hard numbers. And we always say numbers don't lie.
Yes.
So if you have the numbers up to April and they give you that picture, automatically one is no longer an issue, okay? So again, that is going overboard. And I think agriculture was affected, yes, because of floods, like in the case of Kasese and other areas. And also, but the way things like locusts were managed was really impressive. They destroyed, they caused a lot of havoc in Kenya. But in the case of Uganda, it looks as if we really controlled the locusts. Some people say that they will come up again in June or whatever it is. But I think the ability to handle the locusts, I think in the case of Uganda was really quite impressive. So I agree with you that the combination of the three, the locusts, then the floods, and then the pandemic, really, has caused the challenges in the economy. But again, that's why I said, yes, they have, but still the economy is able to grow in the range of 3, so which is really impressive. There are some sectors, we agreed that some sectors like, hospitality industry, those are really hit. So, but the other sectors also, the industry that have really remained resilient, okay? So, and I think that is the positive side. Where actually the 3 decline we're talking about is more to do with, say, to do with the foreign direct investment that has declined. You are talking about tourism. Remember that we normally earn around $1.4 billion. Now it is 0. Remittances from abroad, which is almost down by 50%. So all those are challenging, and that's why you're talking about reduction of growth of 3 percentage point. Okay, so overall, I think the numbers are there, and they are coming from the returns we have seen. And if growth was really minus or 1%, then we wouldn't be talking about like on the food side. You see that the food now, the markets are flooded with the foodstuffs. So which, by the time you see the cassava or the matoke, it automatically means that has been produced by agriculture. Or by the time you see excess milk production, it means that there is a production going on those activities. So we can't be talking about 1 percentage point.
All right.
Yeah.
Doctor, as we conclude, my final question to you would be those that are calling for reviews in both our fiscal and monetary policies, but we'll speak to monetary. How much can we do on the monetary front? And you've spoken about restructuring some of the financial, in the services in the financial sector, but how much more can we do to buffer this stress on the economy, on the monetary side?
What we have done really is, we have opened up and say, okay, on the side of the monetary policy, we say, okay, for a commercial bank that is having a challenge in terms of liquidity. Remember that if you have borrowed money from a commercial bank, the commercial bank relies on the interest payment from the loan you took. Most of their earnings, like some of the banks get 80% of their earnings from interest on loans. So if I have given you a loan from a commercial bank, I have given you a loan and you are unable to service, automatically me as a commercial bank, I'm unable also to get income because you can't pay. So that's what the Bank of Ghana has said, okay, if this person you have given money is unable to pay, you have restructured the loan, which means that you have postponed your income stream 12 months. So Bank of Ghana is saying to a commercial bank, okay, no, we can give you the money in between. Okay, we can also give you money for 1 year, so to make sure that your income, you still have liquidity as you wait for the other person to recover and start repaying the loan. So that ability, now that CBR is 7, tomorrow means we can give a commercial bank liquidity at 7%, so that for even 1 year, to make sure that the person who can't pay the service the loan does not cause the commercial bank also to go under. And I think that is a big contribution in terms of easing liquidity condition. And that's what a central bank does. The other thing we have said, okay, is which also goes into the exchange rate and the borrowing from IMF. We are saying, okay, we shall also struggle as Bank of Uganda. We don't have the dollars to give free to the market. But we are saying we shall endeavor to make sure that the exchange rate is stable, which means that, yes, if you are an importer of raw materials, if you're an importer of capital goods, when the exchange rate is stable, at least you know that, yes, you can plan your activities and make sure that, what you are producing, what you import to produce, etc. is really not affected. That's also another attribute we have done. And also ensuring that the financial system remains stable.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
I've been speaking to Dr. Adam Mugume, who is the acting Deputy Governor, Bank of Uganda, but also the Executive Director of Research here at the bank. And we are talking budget, financial year 2020-2021. Thanks for watching.